Hello, Anna. Thank you for joining us with Conversations with MM today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, everyone. Hello, kumusta? Welcome to Conversations with MM. This is Marivir Montebon here in New York. See, I'm so bundled up. It's super cold here today and for the whole week because there's a winter storm all over the US, or at least in the Midwest and the East Coast. So grabe na. My guest for tonight is a very special person. Gusto ko magbinisaya because ang atong hisgutan kabahin sa lingwaheng Filipino. So, maningkamot ko nga magbisaya ug taman sa ginhawa. And our guest is a professor, an assistant professor, and the program coordinator, the Filipino program of the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Professor Jayson Parba. Welcome. Hello, sir.
Hi, Ate Mariver. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for having me, for joining me. Maayo ka din ha kay alimuot siguro din na sa Hawaii or nang init?
Yes, actually very sunny today there is sa Hawaii. So it's really nice weather. I can't complain.
Oh my gosh, how nice. But here it's really windy and you can hear the winds howl. So unsa ba Bisaya anang muhawl ang wind?
I don't know. To be honest, dili man ko Bisaya expert.
Okay.
Pero murag dangoy-ngoy, I don't know. Mura siya og kanang
di po na huyuhoy kasi huyuhoy is gentle, right?
Maybe. Oo, basin. Oo.
What good? Wala good.
Nahanap ko ang dictionary.
Kailangan tag dictionary. Oh my goodness. So, Professor, tell us about your work as an assistant professor there at the University of Hawaii at Manoa and the program for Filipino language. That's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so I am an assistant professor at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, which means that I'm also tenure track. So I do research and also publish and teach at the same time. So in my capacity as an assistant professor, I teach classes like Filipino language classes, but I also teach culture classes, social linguistics classes, and literature classes that are taught in English. So we have a Filipino program here in Hawaii, which is very, very unique in many ways because we have actually quite a big number of students, around 400 to around almost like 460 students enrolled in our program per semester in our various courses.
Nice.
And we're the only Filipino program in the US or in Hawaii who has or which has the BA in Philippine Language and Culture. So I know that I think in some universities in Japan they also have a Filipino major track, but at the University of Hawaii we have a BA in Philippine Language and Culture, which has two tracks, Filipino or Ilocano. So the students may choose to also major in Ilocano because there's a lot of Ilocanos here in Hawaii, which is really a good thing. And also the Filipino track, which is more of like, the mainstream Filipino language and culture. Yeah. So, and in terms of like our program, aside from, the number of our students, we also have quite a number of lecturers and professors in the program. So as coordinator, I work with around 9 or 8 lecturers per semester who are, teaching language and culture classes with me, which is really, helping the program grow and make sure that our students, especially the Filipinos in the diaspora, our Filipino students here in Hawaii, and also those from the continent, they learn Filipino, or if not, acquire the language or reclaim their heritage, because we have a lot of students who come to us who kind of like forgot or if not learned their language because, their parents didn't teach them, or the school policies in which they went to for high school or grade school were not very supportive of their multilingualism, right? So that happens to a lot of like Filipinos in the diaspora or second or third generation Filipinos who don't speak the language of their heritage. So it's nice to be able to, help spread, or I would say sustain Filipino, not just the language, but the culture itself, because we have like interesting culture classes like Filipino food, music, and rituals. I teach a class on travelogue, which introduces the Philippines from north to south, basically looking at the different ethno-linguistic groups, their cultural practices, the food, the places to visit in those regions. I even teach them how to dance tinikling in my class. So that makes it really,
Know how
really
to
fun.
dance tinikling, huh?
Yeah, I do, because when I was I grew up in the Philippines, so from grade 1 to grade 6, it was mandatory to kind of like do some
Wow.
performance towards the end of the school year, and I was always like assigned to do some dance, like folklore dance. So I'm very familiar with all those dances. So I'm very happy that now finally I can
It's
make
used.
use of those. Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
useful.
amazing. How
Yeah, thank
nice.
you.
So tell us the history of the program at the university,
Mm, yeah,
Professor, because it's interesting why it evolved that way. Was it
right.
market driven, or there because so many
Yeah,
Filipinos there, second to
right.
California?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So at the University of Hawaii, it started with Dr. Teresita Ramos, Tita Terry, we call her. May
Hmm.
she rest in peace. But when she started offering the Filipino classes, it was used to be Tagalog. It was named Tagalog before, and
Hmm.
it was mainly offered for the military who wanted to learn Tagalog, right? Because they
Oh,
have their missions. They get sent to the
to the
Philippines.
Philippines. Yeah.
Yeah, like it started with around 4 or 5 students in the past, and then of course like the program grew, because then eventually the Filipinos in Hawaii who started also encouraging their kids to go to university, and those students eventually also take or started taking up our classes. So as the program grew, the curricular needs of the students also varied. So it started with all language classes like Filipino
Mhm.
101, 102. These are beginning Filipino classes or Tagalog classes. And then 202 and 201. So again, just meeting the basic requirements of
Mhm.
the students for their second language requirement. However, as the program grows, eventually we added culture classes. Like we have a Filipino film class, we have a Philippine literature in English class, we have a folklore class, which basically deals with the aswang, the banadanggal, the tiyanak. We even have a course on Rizal. So again, we have, and the Ilocano program also has so many other courses that really enrich the experiences of our students in the program. So
Mhm.
because of that, eventually the program developed into not just a language program, but really a program that offers a bachelor's degree, right? And we're
When did it
very,
start to have a bachelor's degree?
I kind of forgot the year, but I think in the 90s, late 90s, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken. And then year after year, we have produced graduates who finished the BA. So some of the
Amazing.
students who majored in Filipino or minored in Filipino, their main reason is really to get connected to their Filipino heritage, right?
Mhm.
That's the very main reason. But we also have non-Filipinos who are interested in studying the culture, the history of the people, right? Or if not, it's part of their scholarship. They wanted to be a researcher in Philippine studies, and so they
Mhm.
decide to focus or major in Filipino. So like last semester, I have a Japanese student who's very fluent in Filipino, and she's taking a Filipino advanced class. She's pure
Mhm.
Japanese, and her interest is really to study the Philippines, right? And so that's why we have students who are not just Filipinos, but also we have other students coming from various ethnic groups, or even from the mainland. But I would
Mhm.
say that generally our students, we're around like 95 or maybe higher Filipino heritage students. So that's another unique thing about our
Wow.
program, because I know that in many language programs on the continent, they don't have as many heritage language learners. In Hawaii, the majority of our students are heritage language learners, meaning they are of Filipino ancestry or descent. Yeah.
That's great. So I am
Mhm.
interested to find out, like, do you have enough teachers since the
Mm.
beginning of the program? Were there a lot of teachers who, went to work with the university for that?
Right.
Or
Mhm.
yeah, or do you
So
your graduates? Did you hire them back as teachers?
yeah, that's a really good question. In fact, you're correct. Right now, we have one, two, three, four, five. I think five or six of our lecturers. The majority of our lecturers actually are products of the BA in Philippine
Wow.
Language and Culture. So we started with like some immigrant Filipinos, or like myself, for instance, right, who got hired to teach in the program. But
Mm-hmm.
as we also continue to grow and produce like students who majored in Filipino, and we have found some talents from these students, right? They're really good in terms of like becoming a teacher, right? Pedagogically, they're good and they're very very collegial and also very willing to learn. So
Mm-hmm.
we did hire a couple of them, and now they're part of the Filipino program, which is really good because I think it's really important to represent Filipino as a diverse group of people, right?
Yeah, of
So and I
course.
always emphasize that. So I'm Cebuano, I'm from Mindanao, right? And I represent that part of being Filipino. Two
Mm-hmm.
of our professors come from the Visayas region. We have an Ilongga or Hiligaynon, and we also have a Karaya teacher or professor. We have an
Nice.
Ilocano from the Ilocos, but she teaches with us in the Filipino program. And then we have like teachers who are generation 1.5, meaning they
What's
came
that?
here when they were around like their teenage years, like 11
Teenage.
or 12. So they have the perspective of being Filipino American and also
Mm-hmm.
still very strongly attached to their cultural heritage in the Philippines, right?
Great.
But we do have locals, those who were born and raised here in Hawaii, who also teach in the program. And we really want to nurture that diversity because it's important for our students to see a different set of like representation in terms of what it means to be Filipino. So in
Mm-hmm.
our program, we talk about this in among ourselves with teachers, right? That being Filipino is not just about being born in the Philippines, right? Or it's not just
Mm-hmm.
being about, being able to speak the Filipino language fluently, right? Being Filipino, there's so many definitions of being Filipino, and there's enough space for everybody. Even if you're Bisaya, you're Ilocano, wherever you are from in the Philippines or in the world, whether you're from the continent or here in Hawaii, you can still be Filipino, right? It's really about you and also like getting connected to your roots and culture, even if you don't speak the language fluently. So, in fact, we have Filipino teachers in our program, lecturers and instructors who are not very, very fluent, right, in the language,
Oh,
but they can teach the culture classes, which is really
oh, I
good.
see.
So then we have that diversity of experiences that the students also get to experience from us. Yeah.
So I suppose that your curriculum is very creatively done, intentional,
Mm,
but has a lot of creativity because it's the first of its kind, right? So
mhm.
tell me about the content on your curriculum on language, because we
Right,
have a lot of languages in the Philippines. So
right, right.
there's Bisaya, there's Ilocano,
Mhm.
Waray. So what's Filipino then?
Yeah, so so Filipino in the program is the Tagalog-based Filipino, which is defined as the national language in the
I
Philippines,
see.
right?
Okay, got
Because
it.
it's funded. I mean, like it has a lot of implications too in terms of funding. For instance, a
Hmm.
lot of institutions in the U.S. would only fund national languages, right? But
I see.
recently they recognized Ilocano can be funded as well, which is really good. It's a step
So this is
forward.
federally funded or state?
It depends on some like projects. So we do get
Mm,
funding sometimes from the federal government because of our national status, right? But it's
okay.
important to think of Filipino as really of a lingua franca rather than dependent on the norms of the Tagalog people, right? So
Hmm.
Filipinos should be treated as inclusive. And so as Filipinos, like we come from different parts of the Philippines or the world. And so I often tell my students and my colleagues that Filipino is how we define it. Like we should not rely so much on the rules that is or that are like from the Tagalog. And even our program itself, we talk about like different cultures from the north, south, and central part of the Philippines. And
I
so
see.
we don't really say that we're a Tagalog program because I cannot even identify as Tagalog and I don't have the Tagalog experience, right?
So it's
And
not
so
Manila centric.
yeah, it's definitely not Manila centric. In
I see.
fact, there's only wait. I don't think we have we only have one lecturer who's from Manila. The rest of us
Oh,
were from all over the Philippines, which is really really nice, right?
which is
Um, and
representative
right, and I
of
always
the
tell my colleagues
archipelago.
that yeah, and we need to be again, like I said, we need to be how do you call this, like inclusive in terms of like representing what it means to speak Filipino. So in our program, for instance, we have students who are Ilocanos, we have students who grew up in a Visayan family and then they come to the Filipino program and they would
Mhm.
try to speak in Filipino the way they know it, right? And so
Yeah.
instead of saying, oh, that's wrong, when they would use the word adding, for instance,
Oh,
I would say, oh yeah, definitely adding is completely acceptable, or any Filipino words or Philippine language, you know, like it could be a Bisaya word, it could be they add it into their let's say essay or when they speak,
I
as long
see.
as we understand and they can explain it to us, we won't consider it as wrong, right? So
Mhm.
that's how we try to rethink Filipino as more inclusive. And in spite of the accent of the teachers and the students, we don't make fun of them just because we think that the accent should be like Tagalog like. We don't
Mm,
use the Tagalog accent as our standard. It should be our
okay.
own, you know, experiences, right, with the language. And so I emphasized to my colleagues, for instance, never to laugh when our Filipino American students speak the language and sound different, right? Because
Yeah.
that can be very detrimental. That can actually harm them. Many students stop learning Filipino because they are being mocked at, or you know, people laugh at them, right, when they try to speak the language. So it's, you know, I said it comes with a lot of like repercussions if you laugh the
Mhm.
student for speaking Filipino in a different way. Maybe we just need to listen differently instead of like telling them, oh, you should not say that, right?
Yeah.
As Filipinos, we should be more inclusive, just like how
More
it is in the
accepting.
Philippines. There's Bisaya accent, there's
Yes.
Ilocano accent, there's
Correct.
you know, then why don't we have an American? Why can we not accept an American accent for
Mhm.
speaking Filipino, right? So that's how important it is to rethink
So there's
Filipino.
an
And also it's a,
evolution too, right?
I think
You have
so. I
evolved.
think it's kind of slow because, you know, some people want to safeguard and protect the language from, you know, because they're afraid that we're destroying the language. But really, I
Mm.
mean, I think it's about also the practicality of it, right? And also the kind of support and community that we're trying to build by being inclusive. That's very important. Yeah.
Amazing. Can you
Mhm.
imagine? Well, I'm
Yeah.
happy that you are doing that. And so tell me about your journey as a teacher. I
Oh,
have
yeah.
read that you are a Fulbright scholar, which led you to becoming a teacher in the university here in the US. So, but tell
Yeah.
us your background, Professor.
Sure. So I started, I was an undergraduate in Xavier University at the Cagayan. And when I was an undergraduate, I took up education basically for the
Mhm.
undergraduate. And then when I was like an undergrad, I often heard a professor spoke about being a Fulbright scholar in the US, right? And he really inspired me to also apply for a Fulbright scholarship. And
Mhm.
so I never stopped. So I kept researching, and then eventually, you know, I ended up applying and got
Oh,
accepted
nice.
into the Fulbright program. And
You
that
are
one
elite.
year here in the US, I'm sorry,
You are an elite,
I'm
elite
not sure.
student.
I,
Yeah,
I I did my best,
imagine.
yeah. And so when I had the chance to come to the US, you know, it made me see a different kind of like, I don't know, like maybe
Mm.
different perspectives. My horizons kind of expanded, and I said, oh, I want to come back to do my PhD. And so I went back home for over a year after my
Mhm.
Fulbright program. And then I also applied to come back to do my PhD. So I was able to finish my PhD in second language studies, and which is popularly known as applied linguistics at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And so
I see.
but before that, when I was in the Philippines, I was an English teacher for a couple of years at international school in
Mhm.
CDO. And then after that, I was an assistant professor of English in Capital University for a couple of years. And they were very supportive. They supported me in terms of like, you know, pursuing my dream to get a PhD here. So And then after that, I got lucky because towards the end of my PhD, there was a position at the University of Hawaii where, they were hiring a Filipino instructor. So I got the job. I started as an instructor, and then I worked also hard in order to be promoted to the assistant professor tenure track position. So
Wow.
yeah, it sounds very easy, but actually the fact is it was really a struggle. It was really hard to get to where I am. And there's still a lot of things that I need to do in order to be promoted and, become really successful in my career. And I think teaching is a never ending profession or job. So, like you always have to read, you always have to publish, especially if you're, working for a university, because they're very strict in terms of like the publications
Yeah.
that you need to meet a certain level or number of publications before you apply for tenure. Yeah,
It's a lot of work for a teacher. So
indeed.
my
Yeah,
question
that's
is
correct.
like, did you encounter problems on being discriminated against, and was there a community that helped you or strengthened you?
I mean, discrimination in terms of the workplace, or is it like
Yeah, in the
general
workplace.
discrimination?
Yeah.
Um,
Or were you really, really accepted fully, immediately?
I think it's I did not really, I don't think I experienced discrimination like straightforward, in a manner that is very clear. But of course, it's a struggle, right? If you're working for a predominantly white institution, right? So you feel like you always have to prove yourself and all that. But generally, I think my experience at the University of Hawaii has been like, you know, generally really good
Nice.
because of the big Filipino community, and also because there were a lot of Filipinos before me who basically paved the way for the younger generation to make our experiences, I think, a little better, right? Compared,
Yeah.
and yeah, we're very lucky and
Maybe it
privileged in
was
that way.
harder in the
Yeah.
beginning when they set it
For
up,
sure.
right?
Yeah. Like I'm sure like for Tita Terry, for instance, when she founded the Filipino program, I'm pretty sure that she experienced some, blatant discrimination,
She had
perhaps
to
like,
push, I guess.
it was a very small program, right? And now even if our program is bigger, we're always like, we feel that we always have to prove ourselves that our existence is important, that
Yeah.
the Filipino program or the Filipino language and culture is worth
Mm-hmm.
sustaining, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Let me show this picture. You're teaching some students to create some lantern. So is this
Right.
part
Yeah.
of the heritage or the culture aspect of your
Mm,
program? Tell us
right. So
about
that's
it.
a good. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I went to a high school to do a workshop on parole making. So as part of our commitment to the community, the Filipino program, like through my leadership, we go to different high schools in the state of Hawaii. And
Mm-hmm.
we wanna kind of like encourage the students to pursue and to dream university, to pursue university, right? So, and one way of doing that is to actually establish our presence in the high school to tell the students
Yeah.
that, hey, you know what, when you come to the University
Prepare
of
their
Hawaii at
mind.
Manoa, yeah,
Yeah.
there is a community there for you, and the knowledge that you bring, the cultural experiences that you have, if you come to us, will be valuable, and you can take advantage or leverage on your
Mm-hmm.
experiences. So that's one way, basically, also for us to grow the program, because when the students knew or found out that, oh, there is a Filipino program and I can take language and culture classes in the program, then it really helps our program as well. But so there's multiple purposes, but I really like the experiences of like going to different high schools. And one time we even went to a middle school. I was teaching, or maybe primary school. I was teaching
Wow.
tinikling to grades. I think they were grade 3, 4,
Mm-hmm.
and 5. And it was challenging, but I really had a great experience because the students were so curious about our culture. And
Nice.
I think representation matters a lot in
Mm-hmm.
education. And so when students, Filipino students, or even non-Filipino students see, that our culture is valuable, that we're passionate about sustaining our culture, then those students will also be encouraged to be open-minded to learn about the culture and to respect the people, right? Or to
Nice.
take the
Indeed.
language, and just being open to learning new cultures. And I think that's how we kind of like bridge the gap or the racial divide, the challenges that come with diversity in some ways. So I think, like I really enjoy doing my work because of these opportunities to not just teach at the university, but also go out, and go to the different schools in the K to 12. And also I should mention that recently in Hawaii, we have the Filipino Curriculum Project. So for the first time in the history of, the US, there is a state that offers Filipino American history and culture in the K to 12. This is offered in the high school. So I was part of the team, but really it was actually inspired by high school students who realized that, wait, how come Filipino culture and history is not taught in the high school, right? They don't see it being represented in their history books. And so they petitioned, they work with policymakers, they convince a lot of people, the community, to endorse the curriculum. It's called the Filipino Curriculum Project, and you can look it up. It's very inspiring. And the focus is about identity development. So I was part of the project in a way that I participated in writing the modules for the students and for the teachers who will teach the course. And then I also...
Is this a citywide project or a statewide?
Statewide. But we started with Honolulu. Some schools, it's a step by step. Like right now, we're starting at like some schools, but we're hoping that eventually expand. Yeah. So we have Patricia Halagao here, who's the chair in the College of Education, and she's also a very big, inspiring figure in terms of community work. And so she encouraged me to participate and help. And yeah, it's been really a really great experience to, help our community and sustain our culture through teaching our history and culture in the high school. Yeah.
Very encouraging. So your marketing strategy, if I may say, that's like how you attract students to go to to the program, Filipino program at the university, starts with the high school young people, right? So that's nice. Yeah. That's really making it solid.
Right. And also I think
on that strategy.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of collaboration as well and community work, which really makes our program steady, if not maybe successful in some ways. So that's important.
I don't see this is going on also similarly in California, no? Or not even Boston, where
I think some programs
Filipinos are in place.
That's correct. Although I'm sure that in California, there are already some efforts to teach Filipino, the language, not the history and culture in the high school. And also in some universities in California, like, Berkeley, UCLA. But mostly they're focusing on the language. They do have some culture components too already. But I think our case is a bit unique because, again, of the large population of Filipinos here in Hawaii. So we have that advantage to some extent. And so it's easier to convince like lawmakers, for instance, to say, can we teach Filipino history and culture to the high school?
Because you have the numbers.
And we have the numbers. So numbers kind of like help convince like lawmakers or policymakers, right? Yeah.
Wow. But that's really inspiring and encouraging, Professor Jayson. No, it's so good. So what is your perspective for this year? What's coming up? What are your main concerns personally and professionally?
So I guess professionally we keep working and building the program so that it becomes even stronger, and we're hoping to grow our program more, like hoping to recruit more students and also perhaps recruit teachers who are well equipped to teach in the program. We also have a couple of projects, like I think we're going to Guam to help also their program grow. So I'm part of a project where the director and myself will go to Guam to help them grow their Filipino program. We also have a couple of research projects for me and myself. I'm editing a book and also writing another book and writing other papers. So there's a lot of projects. Yeah, this coming semester, I'll be teaching two classes, which is Filipino 302. It's like an advanced Filipino language class. And I also teach a social linguistics class. I'm excited about that. And there's a couple of conferences as well, which allows me to travel. And
Mhm.
that's really nice. I always look forward to traveling, yeah, when I get a chance. Yeah.
Wow. My question too is like, does your Filipino curriculum focus also on the language structure, grammar, and all that? Do you
You're
teach
right.
that to the
Yeah,
students?
to some extent, yes. We do have like classes, even the beginning and intermediate
Mhm.
level. We teach the structure, the grammar.
Okay.
But really, the goal is for the students to speak the language and
I
become
see.
fluent or proficient in the language. At least when they reach the intermediate level, they should be able to converse. And that is the goal. Although, sometimes we kind of like do not really meet the goal. Sometimes the students are still not very confident when they finish 202, but there's a lot of factors that come into play for why some students are not able to speak the language. But yeah, we still teach the grammar, and we do have courses like the structure of Tagalog, which is really for people who want to become teachers of the language and learn more about the structure. Yeah.
So it's more really on the Tagalog as a language. Like you don't teach Cebuano, the one that I speak or you speak.
No.
I see.
So like I wish we could. There's interest. I did a survey before. Like some people are really interested in learning Cebuano. So that's actually one of my future projects to offer Cebuano,
Okay.
maybe an introduction to Cebuano language and culture. I'll teach a little bit of Cebuano expressions, but also introduce Cebuano Visayan culture to students. I'm very aware, I'm familiar that there's a lot of interest because we do have students who
We're the
are of
majority
Visayan heritage.
actually.
Yeah, we have a lot of students who are of Visayan heritage, so I think
Mhm.
that's going to be exciting if they want to learn more about Visayan language or Cebuano language and culture. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to do, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
programs and opportunities for your
Right.
school.
Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, I'm also thinking of like offering a course on gender because gender in the
Mhm.
Philippines is another like very interesting topic, right?
Yeah.
We're very passionate
Oh
about
yeah.
beauty pageants. Even like straight
Mhm.
people straight men watch beauty pageants like the Miss Universe. We're also into boxing and basketball and all that. So
Yeah. And so
yeah,
why is that?
I'm thinking, yeah, likewise that. So I wanna explore that, and probably I don't know, maybe in the next year I'll offer or will create a course on gender in the Philippine
Oh
context.
my goodness, so much to do. Also, if I
Yeah.
may add on gender, it's also very interesting, like how gender has evolved from pre-colonial times
Exactly.
to colonial times when the
Exactly.
Catholic religion was imposed, and so
Introduced.
it
Yeah.
changed the pre-colonial society, which was a little
Right.
bit more
Yeah.
equal and fairer, right? So I think that's an important aspect
Uh-huh.
to learn again,
Right.
right?
And
From
now
our
the
history.
post-colonial, very globalized,
Yes.
all of these things. Yeah. So it's interesting how, I mean, if we explore gender in, yeah, so that's something that I
It's a
look
whole
forward
gender
to.
studies actually, and
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
focus on the Filipino experience.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Daghan kayong
That can good.
opportunities. So much to do.
Mhm.
And very little time, I suppose. We
Yeah,
have very
which
little
makes my
time
job
left to.
exciting.
Exciting. Life
Yeah,
is exciting. So I'd like to thank you, Jason, Professor Parba, for this time. Very
you're welcome.
engaging.
Walay sa pa yan.
Nindot kayo ang atong conversation, and I would really share this to the teachers all over the US and to look at your program and follow it and create something also for their own in different states. Okay, Nindot, very nice. So all the
All right.
best for the year, and thank you so much for being here with me this evening.
Thank
And
you so much. Thank you.
yes, and I'll see you again whenever you're in New York or when I fly there to Hawaii. Wow, nice. Thank you,
Yes,
ladies and
please come visit
gentlemen.
me.
Yes, I
Bye
will. I
bye.
will.
Thank you.
I will
Thank
put
you.
that in my calendar hopefully this year. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. But first, before we close, I'd like to show you the music of our Waray Waray icon, Mr. Lucien Litaba.